Okay, let's unpack this. We've got this uh, fascinating stack of sources you've shared, articles, research papers, your own notes, all pointing to something genuinely new buzzing in the software world right now. It's being called vibe coding.
Yeah, it's definitely got a buzz around it.
So our mission really is to dive deep into all this material, pull out the most important insights, those surprising facts, maybe some aha moments, and basically give you the shortcut to being well informed on what this actually means.
Getting you up to speed, essentially.
What feels significant here is, well, we're looking at a potential paradigm shift, a big one, driven heavily by AI. It seems like writing code itself might be transforming, moving away from rigid syntax and getting closer to, well, just describing an idea in plain language.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how recent this is, at least by name. The term vibe coding, it was coined just recently, February 2025, by the AI researcher Andrej Karpathy.
Oh, wow, that is recent.
Yeah. But it's already sparking debates, quite a few actually, and changing how people think about building software and, crucially, what skills really matter going forward.
So yeah, get ready to dive in. We're exploring the vibe.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start right at the beginning then. What is vibe coding? I mean, how do the sources actually define this thing?
Okay, so at its heart, vibe coding is really about using AI tools to interpret natural language prompts. Basically, telling the AI what you want in, plain English and having it generate functional code. Now, this is a pretty big departure from the traditional way, right? Where you manually write every line, build everything from the ground up.
So, okay, instead of meticulously typing out the structure and logic for, I don't know, a user sign-up form in React, you might just tell the AI, create a React sign-up form, maybe with email and password fields, add some basic validation, something like that.
Precisely. And the workflow described in the sources, it's not just a one-shot command. It's presented as more cyclical.
Cyclical, how so?
Well, you start with that natural language prompt. The AI generates the code, right? But then you enter this phase of iterative refinement.
Okay.
You look at the code, or maybe just the output, and you adjust your prompt. Add more detail, perhaps, or point out something that's not quite right. Then the AI regenerates. The key thing is you're often refining the prompt, not necessarily digging into complex code you might not fully understand.
That really makes Andrej Karpathy's quote, the one from the sources, stand out. It's not really coding. I just see things, say things, run things, and copy-paste things. Yeah. It paints a picture that's much less about being a, meticulous engineer.
Yeah.
And more like directing the whole creation process, orchestrating it.
You can definitely frame it that way. And the sources, they do highlight a philosophical side to this. Sometimes it's even kind of vibe-driven development.
Oh, okay.
And it emphasizes things like gut feeling, aesthetic coherence, just getting the general vibe of the project right over maybe strictly adhering to rigid blueprints or writing tons of documentation up front.
Right.
Proponents argue this approach really fosters creativity. It dramatically speeds up prototyping and helps make sure the final product actually aligns with that initial, maybe even abstract vision.
I can immediately see the appeal there, especially, like you said, in creative fields. Game development, interactive art, UX design, places where the emotional impact or that user experience vibe is absolutely critical. You're chasing a feeling, not just a function.
Exactly. That potential for rapid iteration, for aligning with an intuitive feel, it's fascinating. But, and this is important, the sources also point out it's not without its significant drawbacks.
Okay, like what?
Well, critics worry a lot. They worry that this can lead to the classic technical debt that slows everything down later.
Oh yeah, tech debt, always a killer.
And collaboration gets much harder, right? If development relies too heavily on just one person's intuition, or if the AI-generated code just lacks clear documentation for others to follow.
Yeah, that technical debt concern feels very real. And Andrew Ng's perspective, that's mentioned in the sources too, it offers a really crucial counterpoint here. He apparently called vibe coding an unfortunate term, because it might sound effortless, but he emphasizes it's actually, quote, a deeply intellectual exercise.
Right. His perspective, which comes across pretty strongly, is really a strong argument against telling people, oh, you don't need to learn code anymore.
Good point.
He stresses that understanding computers, understanding how to give precise instructions, that's still fundamentally vital. Even if an AI is doing the actual typing, it's about understanding the logic underneath it all.
So the AI is a tool, a powerful one, but you need to know how it works, what good code looks like to use it well.
Exactly. So he acknowledges the AI potential, absolutely, but he grounds it firmly in the need for that foundational knowledge.
Okay, so this whole concept, it absolutely hinges on the AI tools that are available today, doesn't it? They're
Yeah.
the core enabler, the catalyst for this whole vibe coding approach.
Absolutely. The AI toolkit is what handles the heavy lifting, right? Generating the code, dealing with all the complex syntax, which frees up the person doing the prompting to focus on that higher level vibe or the desired functionality.
The sources list quite a few specific tools. We
Yeah.
probably don't need to go through every single one, but maybe highlighting a few categories, some examples, could help show the landscape.
Sure.
We're seeing things like AI-first code editors, Cursors mentioned, that let you edit code directly just using natural language commands.
Yeah, and then you have the big AI code generators like GitHub Copilot. That really pioneered the whole AI pair programmer idea,
Right.
suggesting code as you type, or even generating whole blocks from just a comment describing what you want.
Right, Copilot's huge.
Google's Gemini Code Assist falls into this category too, and these things integrate directly into your coding environment, your IDE.
And it's not just generating code inside an editor, right? The sources mentioned large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT, being used almost as brainstorming partners.
Totally. Describing a function or a system and just asking for potential code structures, ways to approach it.
And it's influencing design, too.
Yes, absolutely. The sources show AI is moving into design as well. Tools like Uzard or Midjourney can generate UI designs or visual assets just from text prompts. That ties directly into that vibe focus you're describing, the aesthetic you want, and the AI helps create it.
Then there are more specialized tools mentioned. Cody, by SourceGraph, that's described as an AI senior developer that supposedly understands your entire code base, offering more context-aware suggestions.
And Vercel's V0, which generates production-ready React UI directly from text prompts, that could speed up front-end development significantly.
So the overall picture from the sources is, it's this rapidly expanding ecosystem of AI tools, all designed to turn natural language or just high-level intent into functional outputs, code, design, maybe even full apps.
Yeah, and the sources really frame this as a massive opportunity.
They suggest a single developer armed with these tools could potentially achieve what used to take a whole team.
That's a critical takeaway, I think. It's seen as democratizing software development, really lowering the barrier to entry for solopreneurs, creators, people who might not have that traditional deep coding background.
Right.
Think about that example from the sources. Maybe you have a mobile game idea. You could use Midjourney for the art. By just describing the style, use ChatGPT to brainstorm the game logic, and then get GitHub Copilot to help actually write the code.
That kind of rapid prototyping by one person.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was way harder just a few years back.
for sure.
So, okay, if AI is doing more of the coding, what happens to the people who are developers, the human developers? Is vibe coding going to lead to mass job losses, or is it something else?
Well, the sources suggest it's probably less about outright mass job loss, at least for experienced developers right now, and much more about a fundamental transformation of roles and the skills that are most in demand.
Transformation, okay.
Although there was that statistic mentioned, 34% of software engineering internships were cut in 2024. Some analysts are linking that to early AI adoption, reducing the need for some entry-level tasks. So that's definitely a concern for people just starting out.
Right, that's significant. But for those already in the field, the skill set itself is shifting.
Exactly. There's a definite reprioritization happening. Deep, specific mastery of just one programming language, say Python or Java, might become less critical than, well, prompt engineering.
Ah, prompt engineering. We hear that term a lot.
Yeah, the skill of crafting effective, clear, and importantly, iterative instructions for the AI. It's about being a good communicator, really, but communicating effectively with a machine.
That's a really significant shift in focus. And the sources bring up this concept, the productivity paradox. What's that about in this context?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little counterintuitive. The sources indicate senior developers are seeing massive productivity gains with these AI tools. We're talking 2x, maybe even 3x output increases. Because they have the experience, right? They know how to guide the AI effectively, how to debug the inevitable issues, and they can understand the generated code. But the paradox is, junior engineers might actually struggle more, at least initially.
Why is that?
Well, they potentially miss out on some of that foundational learning that comes from writing code line by line, figuring out the bugs themselves. And this automated environment, it could reduce those traditional mentorship opportunities where you learn by watching and doing alongside seniors.
That makes sense. You need a certain baseline understanding to even know if the AI is giving you something reasonable or just buggy garbage.
Right. And that Google Cloud survey finding is telling 68% of vibe coders spending less than 20% of their time actually reviewing the generated code.
Oof.
That speed is great, obviously, but it ties directly back to those concerns about quality, and especially security if you don't have the experience to spot potential problems quickly.
Okay, so if some traditional coding skills are becoming maybe less central, what are the new job opportunities? What are the in-demand skills emerging from this vibe coding trend?
The sources point to a few key areas. Roles like AML prompt engineer or prompt developer, basically. The person who bridges human intent and machine execution.
The translator, almost.
Kind of, yeah. Then roles like creative technologist or creative developer seem like a perfect fit for the vibe ethos. They operate at that intersection of art, design, and tech, where the focus is really on the experiential outcome.
Makes sense.
Rapid prototypers, innovation specialist people needed to quickly test and iterate on new ideas. And, like we discussed, solopreneurs and indie hackers are just massively empowered now to build minimum viable products, MVPs, super fast.
So skills like writing repetitive boilerplate code or maybe sticking rigidly to just one specific programming methodology, those might decline in importance.
That seems to be the trend highlighted.
While flexibility and actually leveraging AI effectively, those become core competencies.
Exactly. Forbes, for instance, describes this evolution, developers moving from being purely builders to becoming more like architects and quality controllers.
Architects and quality controllers.
Yeah.
Interesting framing.
Yeah, you need deep technical knowledge, not necessarily to write every single line yourself anymore, but to oversee what the AI produces, making sure it's correct, efficient, and crucially secure.
Right.
They even use the term bifurcation, basically a splitting of roles. On one hand, you have product engineers who leverage AI to get the desired end result, focusing more on domain expertise. And on the other, high coding architects who need that really deep code understanding for complex systems, security, integration, performance tuning.
And the sources do mention some early indicators, maybe a slowdown in general IT employment that some analysts are starting to link to these generative AI productivity gains across the board.
It's a mention, yeah. Early days, perhaps, but a potential signal.
But that democratization angle remains strong. The idea that someone without formal engineering training, like that product designer building the dog ID app that was mentioned, they can now become a creator in a way they couldn't before.
Absolutely. That's a powerful thread running through the sources.
It definitely helps to see this concept in action, though.
Yeah.
Let's maybe look at some real-world examples from the sources where these principles of vibe coding seem to be at play, even if the creators didn't explicitly use that term back then.
Yeah, there are some great illustrations. Take the indie game Untitled Goose Game.
Oh, love that game.
Right. A GDC talk about its creation highlights how the development was super iterative, really intensely driven by capturing that mischievous and chaotic goose vibe.
Totally. You feel it.
They let that feeling guide the design decisions, rather than having rigid, upfront documentation dictating everything. That focus on feel, that iterative refinement, it's a perfect example of vibe coding principles in a creative space.
That game absolutely nails a specific feeling. It's a great illustration of how the vibe can be the core driver. Yeah.
Then you look at something like the Allwords website showcase. Many of the sites featured there, they prioritize creating a unique mood, an immersive user experience, a really specific vibe. The underlying code is often complex, sure, but it's all in service of that aesthetic and experiential vision. And the process of refining those experiences, tweaking things to get the feel just right, that really aligns with that iterative nature of vibe coding.
And the lean startup methodology that Eric Ries popularized, that shares a core principle too, doesn't it?
It does. It's all about rapid iteration based on a high-level vision, you could call it a vibe, for a minimum viable product, an MVP.
Right, get something out fast.
Exactly. Prioritizing getting a functional product out quickly to test your assumptions, rather than building perfect, fully documented code from day one. And it's often driven by founder intuition, that gut feeling.
Okay, moving to more explicit AI-driven examples from the sources. What about those?
Well, there's the Traina AI fitness app. This was apparently created by an art director, Leonard Florin, using AI tools.
An art director?
Yeah, with reportedly no prior coding experience. That's a really powerful example of how non-technical individuals are being empowered to become actual product creators.
Wow, yeah, that really brings the democratization point home.
Yeah.
And what about the InReal.in Instagram video downloader?
Right. A user reported building a fully functional website for that in just 10 minutes using the Cursor AI editor.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. The speed for creating a functional utility like that is, well, it's pretty incredible.
Definitely.
We even see a developer who created a site called ctreeallotvibe.dev specifically as a portfolio to showcase projects built using this methodology. It's kind of a meta example showing there's a community actually forming around this whole approach.
Ah, that's great. And smaller examples too, like findasks.com, using AI to find customer needs online with minimal coding, or secretnamegame.com, described as a simple, profitable social sharing app developed using these techniques.
Yeah, sources like the New Camp blog highlight these, showing it's applicable even for smaller projects or beginners.
And circling back to that Dog ID app, the Business Insider article, highlighting how a product designer at Block built it in just 2 months using vibe coding techniques without formal engineering training.
All these examples together, they show it's not just theoretical anymore. It's actually happening out there.
Yeah, it's clear this isn't some obscure concept just confined to research labs or anything. The sources show vibe coding, and these related ideas, they're capturing significant attention. In the news, broader tech discussions.
Absolutely. It's being debated pretty heavily on developer forums, DEV, Hacker News, various subreddits. You see publications ranging from tech blogs like The New Stack to major outlets like the Economic Times running pieces asking, does vibe coding make everyone a programmer?
And Entrepreneur Magazine noted that even Google CEO Sundar Pichai is reportedly experimenting with these methods himself.
Yeah, it's definitely reached that mainstream tech conversation. We see specific media points like Forbes discussing how AI is transforming the developer landscape and citing that bifurcation of roles we talked about.
The product engineer versus the high-coding architect.
Exactly. And they even note that a substantial portion of Y Combinator startups, that's a major tech accelerator, are already using AI-generated code bases. Companies like EPAM are discussing the accessibility and efficiency gains.
And importantly, Cyberscoop is raising those crucial security concerns, which feels like a really vital part of this whole discussion.
It absolutely is. And it cycles back to thought leaders like Nat Friedman talking about AI amplifying human creativity, allowing developers to focus more on the why, the core goal, the vibe, rather than just the how, the nitty-gritty code implementation.
But juxtaposed, importantly, with Andrew Ng's cautions about still needing that core coding literacy, even as these powerful AI tools advance.
That balance seems key.
Okay, well, that brings us directly to what the sources refer to as the dark side of this trend, vibe hacking. Now, this sounds potentially quite dangerous.
It absolutely does. Vibe hacking is essentially the malicious application of these same AI tools, using them to generate code or content for nefarious purposes.
And the primary risk highlighted in the sources is exploiting security vulnerabilities that can inadvertently be present in the AI-generated code itself.
That's the main concern, yeah. Because the large language models, the LLMs, they're trained on just vast amounts of code scraped from the internet, right?
Yeah.
Some of which inevitably contains insecure patterns, old vulnerabilities, bad practices, and the models can learn and reproduce those.
Okay. So it's learning from flawed examples sometimes.
Precisely. And the sources point out that this significantly lowers the barrier to entry for cybercrime. Someone with minimal or even no traditional coding skill, the so-called script kiddies, could potentially use simple natural language prompts to generate surprisingly complex malicious code. It just widens the pool of potential attackers dramatically.
And for the established, more sophisticated hacking groups.
It amplifies their existing threats. AI allows them to scale their operations much faster, generate malicious code variations far more quickly than before. They could potentially orchestrate more sophisticated attacks, maybe even, as some sources speculate, attempt to exploit zero-day vulnerabilities.
Those are the flaws attackers know about before the vendor does.
Right. If AI can help them discover or generate exploits for those previously unknown flaws, that's a serious escalation.
So the AI-generated code itself can inherently contain common weaknesses. Things like SQL injection, where hackers sneak commands into a database, or cross-site scripting, XSS, injecting malicious scripts into web pages.
That's the critical point raised by sources like Cyberscoop and other security research mention. Studies indicate AI-generated code can be, well, notably insecure precisely because it's trained on existing code, including flawed examples.
Right.
Which means even if the person prompting the AI has the best intentions, just blindly trusting and using the generated code without a proper security review is really dangerous. It can inadvertently introduce serious vulnerabilities into applications.
Wow. Okay, so this really underscores the vital need for human oversight.
Yeah.
For that strong foundation in secure coding principles, even with the incredible speed that vibe coding seems to offer. It's finding that balance between the ease and speed of AI-powered development and absolutely rigorous security practices.
That balance is critical, yes. You can't sacrifice security for speed, especially not when the tools themselves might be introducing the risks.
So, okay, bringing this all together then, based on this whole stack of sources you provided, what's the overall picture? What's the synthesis of vibe coding?
Well, the consensus from the material seems to be that vibe coding represents a pretty fundamental shift in how software is conceived and potentially built. It's not just a passing trend or, a meme.
Right.
It's driven by these incredibly powerful AI tools and also, interestingly, by what seems to be a desire for more creative, maybe more fulfilling development work, allowing focus on the outcome, the vision, rather than just the implementation grind.
It seems like the future, according to these sources anyway, involves some kind of blend. Logic and structure meet intuitive vibe.
Right. And while it offers just incredible potential for speed, for creativity, for democratization, the sources are very clear that significant challenges remain. Big questions about code quality, the sheer difficulty of debugging complex AI-generated systems,
Hmm.
and critically, those security implications of vibe hacking. These all require evolution. Evolution in our skills, evolution in our development practices, and definitely evolution in our ethical considerations around deploying these AI tools responsibly.
It sounds like the future isn't so much humans being replaced by AI, but maybe more of a collaborative ecosystem, where human creativity, critical thinking, that essential oversight are powerfully augmented by AI tools.
That seems to be the most likely path forward described in these sources, yeah.
Yeah.
Augmentation, not replacement, at least for skilled roles.
Wow, okay, that was a truly deep dive. We've really unpacked a lot here on vibe coding. From its definition, that cyclical workflow, the powerful AI tools making it possible, the huge impact it's already having on jobs and developer roles,
Hmm.
those really striking real-world examples, how it's being discussed everywhere in the news, and yeah, that absolutely crucial, slightly scary dark side of vibe hacking.
It's undeniable, I think, that AI is fundamentally transforming how software gets made. And this has the potential to empower you, the listener, to build things much faster than before. It will change the digital products you interact with every single day.
Yeah.
And it's definitely altering the skills that are going to be most valued in the tech world moving forward.
And this shift, it requires more than just embracing new tools, right?
Hmm.
As Andrew Ng and others pointed out, it demands real critical thinking
Hmm.
about the quality, about the security of what's being built, and finding that essential balance between the intuitive vibe or the desired outcome and that foundational technical knowledge you need to
Hmm.
actually guide and vet the AI properly.
Which leaves us, I suppose, with a pretty profound question for you to consider. In a world where, as some sources suggest, the code itself becomes less important than the desired outcome, and development really can be driven by a vibe, how do we make sure that the digital world we're all building together remains robust, secure, and trustworthy for everyone? What does quality even truly mean when AI is generating so much of the underlying structure?